In this movie, we'll be talking about CSS3 transitions. Now, there are transitions and there are animations. Both are different properties in CSS and they work slightly differently, but both of them involve animating an object around a page. CSS3 transitions refers to making an element animate whenever something changes about it. For now, let's talk about why. If you're following along, you can open up transitions.html in your working files folder. If you open that up in the web browser, there's a wonderful link here, CSS3 transitions versus JavaScript. In this case, what they're trying to show is why CSS3 transitions are worth it, and it can be summed up in one word, performance. Let's take a look. Here we have a very large number of boxes. And if I click on this button here, all of the buttons will animate to black. Notice how they faded? Now that seems to be a kind of a choppy animation. It turns out that was actually the CSS3 transition demo. If you scroll down, here we're using the jQuery animation library to animate all of these elements from white to black. And watch what happens here. So click. And it took about 2.5 seconds to animate, I'm putting that word in air quotes, from white to black. The reason I'm putting animate in air quotes is because it didn't animate at all. It took so long to change the state of all of these elements that they just switched directly to black. If I click again, you'll see. After that long delay, they just switched to white again. Turns out if you scroll down even further, this is what happens with CSS transitions. It'll recalculate the style of all of the elements at once, again and again and again and again and again. If you scroll down and look at the jQuery animation version, it recalculates the style for the page for every single box as each box changes. That's why it's so ridiculously slow. When it comes down to it, it's because CSS3 transitions are written in the browser's language, not in JavaScript. No matter how good JavaScript gets, it'll never be faster than the browser itself. So that's one huge benefit to using CSS3 transitions. Let's look at Can I Use for the support table. It turns out CSS3 transitions are very well supported in all of our browsers aside from Opera Mini, which we don't tend to think about too much, and IE9 and below, so that's the big one. Of course, if you want to use a polyfill, something to fill in the gap to make IE9 and below behave, you can use an animation framework like jQuery to fill in the gap. Now let's talk a little bit about the different paradigm behind CSS transitions. So as an example, when I say .box:hover, background color of 9F9, what'll happen is when I hover over the box, the background color will change to green. When I hover back, it'll change to red. Now, if you wanted to make this animation actually happen with JavaScript, you would say, hey browser, whenever the mouse goes over this box, start this animation from your current color to green. When the mouse leaves, start the animation from your current color back to red. And you would actually write the code that makes that happen. With CSS transitions, the paradigm is completely different. What you're going to do is instead say, hey browser, anytime the background color changes, for any reason whatsoever, animate it. And we set up that rule, that transition, up here in .box. And now, when you hover over it, you'll see that the animation happens over 1 second in a linear easing fashion. Background color is the property being changed. Now again, I said if it changes color for any reason whatsoever. That means I could even go into the inspector here, and I could even take this box and change its background color to be blue. And you'll notice that indeed the animation happens. I could turn off background color, and it animates back to white. Now we're not starting animations, we're changing properties. We're saying whenever the property changes for any reason, whether that's JavaScript, a CSS class added, a user action like a hover, any of those things or anything else, make it animate instead of changing it instantaneously. That's how we set up a basic CSS transition.